Hello. That's just for the thumbnail. I'm not really mad at this, or at least extremely. Oh boy. So here we go. So let's see. What is the hair problem? Well, for context, we have to go to Redwall. Now, if you've been listening, the beginning of these issues do not begin with this book. Instead, they actually start off quite the opposite. Basil Stag Hare is one of the best characters in the series, by far. Now, when I also say this, I'm not saying that overall maybe he's my absolute favorite. And even by best, I don't even necessarily mean the one with character arc, the one with the interesting story, uh, the one who like is the absolute most absolute coolest. I'm not even saying that, or most sympathetic, or all the other kind of things that we kind of elevate. What I like about Basil Stagg is that he epitomizes everything about Redwall that's great. He is magical. He is fun. He has the the and we'll get into this gluttonous side, the perilous side. He has the trickster side. He has the cheeky side. He has the very kind side. Um, he epitomizes everything great about Redwall. And to top it all off, he's again very British, which is why we like Redwall, is because if you're an American, and this is kind of like one of the British series. There's a couple, right? We read Lewis or Tolkien, and to to us, kind of, if the series doesn't have a series of Britishness to it, as outsiders looking into Britain, we kind of are not really all that interested. But there's a lot of great British stuff, and what holds the Britishness together in Redwall is Hares. Hares are pretty much the epitome of the Britishness of Redwall. Everything we like, from the cocky nature to the very gung ho kind of old school British war general kind of vibe that they bring off. That brings off memories of kind of older times, time before the modern age, and of that old school heroism that was kind of uh, epitomized in World War II, that British pluck, right? That's what hares represent in the series. And so I am also the one to unfortunately break that this hares are kind of the make or break of the series. And so we have usually two things that are most associated with hares in terms of characteristics that get really established, especially cemented later on. One of them is perilous, and one of them is gluttonous. And these intermix, weave. Some get more promoted than others. Unfortunately, this balance has not always been achieved properly. In the first four books, I want to say this has been achieved rather effectively. Gets achieved rather effectively. And it's important to remember, until Salamandastron the book, there were really, unless I'm forgetting someone, there's only about like 6 plus 4. There's only like 11 hares even mentioned in the entire series. One of which, Basil Stag Hare, is the only hare in both books. Something that even badgers don't do. Badgers have There are three badgers in Madame. Uh, Basil Stag Hare is the only hare male, which is pretty impressive to think about. That's another big distinctive, and why Basil Stag Hare kind of stands out. However, after Salamandastron, the list grows and grows because hares are popular, which and it's understandable. And probably Brian Jakes loved hares too. So, um, but it eventually becomes an issue when I think, especially when this trope gets played out quite a bit, and sometimes it's not that interesting. And it actually gets less interesting the less balanced it is. And it gets less interesting the less balanced it is when it's in one particular direction. And that's unfortunately the gluttonous side. Because the gluttonous side of hares is a joke. It's a silly thing to contrast the perilous natures of hares. That's mainly what it is. And hares have not uh, always been uh, distinctively gluttonous. There are a couple other gluttonous uh, characters throughout Redwall who are not hares. So it kind of gets annoying when it gets overplayed, especially with hares. And it's a joke, and it can be funny, but it often gets overplayed. And this kind of culminated after Bomb Patrol. So we're building up hares, and then finally we get um, Lawn Patrol. Lawn Patrol is the ultimate book in terms of the number of hares, I believe, in the series as a whole. I think there's only a couple books that might contend, one of which we'll get into in a minute. But uh, Lawn Patrol, because it was focused on Lawn Patrol, and the Lawn Patrol and Salamandastron are pretty much like this. They're the two halves of Salamandastron. You have Badgers on one side and the Lawn Patrol hares on the other. And it culminated with having a hero hare for the first time in the series, like the main character. I don't mean like heroic hares. I mean just Hare is the main hero with Tamo. And Tamo kind of stood out. He was just a regular hare. And maybe that, and I remember not thinking Tamo was all that interesting of a hero. However, this would not be the major issue because he wants to be a hare that fights in the Lawn Patrol. And that kind of feels typical hero's journey, and it's okay, but it's not great. However, after Lawn Patrol, there was a brief stint where because of the number of hares in Lawn Patrol, the numbers went way down. And I can't remember if Legend of Luke was after Lawn Patrol or not, but pretty much after Lawn Patrol, and again, let me double check the list because this is important. Okay, so there were okay, so actually I was wrong. Okay, this is important. So, but between the number of hares went down because there was Legend of Luke and Fox, and each of those only had about one hare each. Now, in Fox, we are introduced to Florine. And Florine is kind of the first hare where the the balance between gluttonous and perilous starts to shift a little. Not too much, but a little. This also happens with Lord Brocktree, strangely, which has the most hares, because then we have Dottie. And both these hares are fairly okay balanced. They're not amazing, and I really like Dottie, and I think I remember liking Florian, but I always felt like those two characters, they're starting to stretch. Then we got Burab, and I like Burab, strangely, considering where I'm going to go with this. But Burab has the most gluttonous personality of a hare, pretty much of the entire series up until this point in the series. He's the most gluttonous hare, kind of laid back. Um, and this is from my recollection. But as far as I recall, because Burab is in my favorite book in the series, this is where it really starts to get highlighted. But Burab doesn't cross a line. He almost does, but he comes close to crossing a line between being gluttonous to the point of annoyance. And but he has the best song in the book. He rallies them at the end. He's the one who basically saves everybody at the very end of the book through kind of a lucky coincidence, but it's great. And so Burab at least has some somewhat redeeming qualities, and they don't outweigh his gluttonous nature. However, I think the problem with Harris culminates where the gluttonous outweighs the perilous to such a degree that it doesn't register that that's a problem. And it culminates interest with Bescarum. And boy, do I not like Bescarum. I used to listen to Triss all the time, and I would have told you at one point I might have put this higher on my list. Now I think Triss is one of the worst books in the series. Unfortunately. Very unfortunately, because I like this book. Please. Oh my gosh. Ignore there's a annoying person looking straight at me. So trying to ruin this video. Anyway, I think I'm about to throw this book at her. You can't see her, she's over there at the window. Or was. Ugh, sisters. Anyway, getting back to this issue, the Scarum is annoying. And not only is he annoying, he does things that I'm like, I'm not sure if your later actions that you're trying to show Brian Jitz that he is still a heroic character really redeem it. He does something so stupidly horrendous near the end of this book that I was surprised how much I hated it. I hated it to such a degree, and man, it was so annoying. There's a thing that happens at the very, very end, and it's like, oh, I'm glad that happened to him. And he doesn't die, but there's an incident that I'm like, oh, glad. I'm glad you did that because annoying. Ah, boy. And this book is a mess. When we get to it, I'll explain why this book doesn't work overall. I think it's about actually more of a half and half book, but the fact that I can call this about a half and half book for Redwall or less than a half and half book of good and bad tells you something. Kind of annoys me. Anyway, so the Bescarum problem, which is why I'm also calling this hair problem the Bescarum. I'm just going to call it the Bescarum. So the question will be, when does this actually begin? And also, does even the perilous, and I like the perilous more, become kind of just standard at some point? When does Hares stop becoming interesting in the series as a whole? Not entirely. And Rackety Tam, which comes 2 books after, has some of the best Hares in the series. It just does. So the question is, what? does it take to maintain Basil Stag Hare versus Bescarum? And how does that weigh in comparison to also the quality of the bucks and why hares play such a pivotal part of why we enjoy Redwall as a whole? Because I think hares, even if they're not my favorite uh, species in this series, they are the epitome. They are the epitome of everything that makes everything that I like and also have problems with the series. I think they do. I think it's going to be demonstrated. Now maybe I'm going to be proven wrong. This is a thought experiment, so this is where it's going to go. How do we go from Basil Stag Hare to this? Is there a balance? Is there not? And we're going to find that few hares will break the mold. But does breaking mold make for better hares necessarily? We'll see. Or there's one that obviously comes to mind, which is Martha, and we're going to get into her when we get into Gnome Hedge. But she's very distinct. Does that help or hurt? We'll see. By not being neither, at least mostly, neither. We'll see. She has a bit of spirit, but that's not what I mean. Uh, is she? She's not distinctly perilous or gluttonous as being her main, either one of her main character traits. So we'll see. Anyway, so there we are. The hair problem, or the Bescarum. Where does this begin? How badly does it affect the books? And mostly, we're going to meet some really awesome hares, and they're going to be the signpost. Hares are going to be the signpost for this series, and why I want to talk about it. And we're going to be highlighting at least 3 or 4 of the hares in each book of series, just depending on how many there are. I'm not going to try to focus on any more than 4 hares in book because there's Llama Patrol, of course, Salamandastron books, in which there's whole regimens and there are names that get thrown around. But we're going to try to focus on only about 3 or 4 per book and use them as the litmus test. And and we're still going to enjoy it because most of them are great. Most of them are wonderful. Hares are still some of the best characters in the series, and we're going to find that out. Just where does the problem start to begin? And show that there are cracks in Redwall. So there we go. Hope to talk to you soon, and we'll get into the quest, book 2 of Redwall next time. I see you. Have a wonderful day.